Right.
I have so many at home. So many different ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just some stuff I wanted to mention. If we could get you guys some of that.
All right, it is 5:30, and I will call the Planning Committee meeting to order. We have 4 items on the agenda. The first item is financial support request from Main Street, Ravenna, and I think we have Brian Hare. If you want to step up and make your pitch.
A little potty humor.
Oh, okay.
Hi. Brian here, Main Street, Ravenna. Do I get my address? 266 South Freedom Street, Rick Street. Yes. Happy about that. Amy, who's also our next year, she's our president-elect, so she's here in support as well. So I think you guys all got the letter, and then she brought the sort of year in review. I don't know. I don't think it makes sense for me to read that letter. So I guess kind of just open the floor to questions and thoughts and concerns. I think ultimately, the grand scheme is that we'd like to bump the city's contribution to $15,000 a year. We still think that's, while that's a significant increase from $5,000, which is what it's been historically, we're still well below what's recommended from Heritage Ohio. Really about a third or 33% of our budget should be coming from the municipality, and right now we're at 6.25%. So I think we feel like we're kind of trying to make up a little bit for lost time as far as that number is concerned. So kind of open it there, I guess.
Now, was that when you said that ever told to us when, I can't remember, so was that stated to us before when you guys were in the process of Main Street? I don't remember because I remember having meetings at the library, and that's when Peggy and
Amy, what I remember from that was that we were told that in order to be a Main Street, you had to be able to produce a budget of $80,000 over a 3-year period, and that was done, was submitted and done without. I think Rob came in and asked us to donate to it, and that's when we originally settled on the $5,000 for that. We also, I believe, there's a $500 fee.
We agreed to pay,
that we also agreed to pay, that if we don't pay it, then Main Street had to pay it. But it was one that was particularly for the local government to show your participation by paying that $500 fee. I don't ever remember any talk about what percent we should put in, other than the dialogue we had in your committee, Rob.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember there ever being, back then, the proposal that it be a certain percentage. And that's just a recommendation. As you noted in the letter, we rank pretty low, like 21 out of 23 in the state in terms of our level of support. And upping it to 15,000 would put us pretty much in the middle of the pack, or, in a respectable area. And obviously, since there is no mandate, I think Main Street Ravenna or Main Street America just has that expectation, to give you a ballpark. But when we did bring it up, I do remember I investigated Kent, and this is some years ago, and their commitment is really significant. It was $65,000 a year.
That's from Kent State, isn't it? Some of that is from Kent State that funds it.
I think that's the city of Kent. I don't know that the Kent State.
And I think it's at 70 now.
Okay.
No, Brian, you would know, because I thought at some point Kent State did donate money to them as well.
They probably do, but that is Kent's contribution. Okay. They did. I think they downgraded it just a little bit in 22, just because of maturity, but it's still in the 60s. You're gonna go back to 70, I think.
Now, with that amount of money that Kent gives, is there expectations that Kent has them do? Like, do they do the decorating of the downtown for Christmas, or what exactly?
I mean, from what I understand, most of it's, and I'm not the expert on it, but most of it's for the festivals and stuff that they do, and they put all that together. They do quite a bit of summertime activities.
Dora.
I just meant, that it, took maybe less off. I'm just trying to analyze, like, did it take less off, like, city workers because they're doing, Main Street and their staff is doing it. I'm just trying to look for, offsets for that amount of money. I mean, and again, we can't compare ourselves to Kent. That is a completely different funding source, and the whole 9 yards. It's completely different.
And I'd be glad to follow up on that. I mean, really, the question you're asking, Amy, is like, is this tied to anything? I think generally it's just, this is operating. This is the amount we're giving you because it's 25 years that they can do that. And exactly to your point, we're 3 or so years in, right? We're still a baby as far as this goes. So, I think, that's a little bit of the difference as well.
Another way to look at it, though, because donations typically are not, for this type of organization, tied to a specific activity, unless it's an in-kind donation. If it's just money, it just typically goes into the operating budget. But as you can see in the summary sheet, we get a return on this investment. And, most recently, the district plan, which was a $50,000 investment that the city now has at its disposal to adopt and use or endorse.
Whatever word, right?
Whatever word fits. And that's money that the city did not have to spend for a plan, which, by the way, won an award for its excellence. So I'm firm, I believe that 15,000 is a good, fair amount for the city to be contributing.
I agree. I think, we hear a lot of people saying there's nothing to do in Ravenna. I don't come to Ravenna because there's nothing to do in Ravenna. Supporting this is going to help them to continue to, once all this is hopefully, said and done, right? To continue to bring in more people downtown, do the movies on the green, and to do all of those things that bring people here and give them a reason to support Ravenna.
Can you walk me through, and that was one of my concerns, what you were talking about, Amy, but the other, can you walk me through the organization's board and subcommittees and how it's set up? Because I think one thing, we had those 5 members who aren't, correct me if I'm wrong, part of the Main Street board or subcommittee come in about 218 West Main Street. Main Street, those representatives were at odds with what the city wanted to move forward with, and there was some confusion. Are they or aren't they part of the Main Street board or organization? Can you just walk me through, when we're talking about operating costs, I understand that there's, you're without an executive director right now. You're going to have to put on events. There's a lot of things going on in terms of capital donations. Can you walk me through what that might entail? And maybe that's just the 2021 year in review, just replicating that in 2022.
You mean in terms of where that 15 could potentially go, or just like how our organization generally functions?
General function, yeah. Line. Where's the line between Main Street and Chamber? In terms of, because that is, I'm just, I think just during conversations of, that is one of the knee-jerk reactions, if you will, from council or the public, is just the difference. And I'm not trying to stoke a fire. It's a genuine question. What is the difference between the two?
And that's something, Andrew, that when I talked to him on the phone, I had suggested that maybe somebody from on both parties, like someone from Main Street, actually serve on the Chamber's board, and somebody from the Chamber actually, be involved or, attend or be a liaison, maybe not be a voting member, but be a liaison, because you've got 2 organizations, but as what we said, trying to do the betterment of Ravenna, but yet you 2 are different, but nobody really, there's no communication on, I think, of how you guys can, offset each other and work together stronger.
I think to Andrew's point too is that trying to understand what we are too. And granted, you say, well, it's been 3 years, figure it out. But I think that's something we've still kind of been wrestling with. And I think there was a situation where Chamber was doing some sort of what are traditionally a Main Street type of thing. And then, and so it was like, well, why do we need this if we've got this? I'll go kind of back to what you're talking about. I think, I don't know who was here for the meeting in question. I mean, I think it was a mix of interested parties, core team people, and board members of Main Street. One of the most important tenets and missions of the program is preservation, right? So if city says, they're going to knock a building down, then, I think we could probably can bring that information in a different way than maybe we did, a little more prepared and speaking to our talking points related to that. But that's something that we're super passionate about. We're not going to, history and preservation honors that and then tries to have those conversations, tries to preserve and save what is part of our history. And granted, an unfortunately not so great looking part of our history at this point with all of the additions to the front. But, regardless, I think that's part of the conversation that we always are going to be having when that's kind of decision that's going to be made. The other component, the marketing committee that I'm the chair of, we are kind of more of the events focused part of the group, putting on movies on the square, art on Main, some of the other ones I listed. That's kind of our bag, but we all are sort of sharing in the work of the organization. So the events certainly is a component. Preservation, the Paul Brunn grant is a huge component. And then business enhancement, which is also probably, Amy, where we're seeing a little bit of that friction as far as, what is Chamber, what is Main Street. Chamber, to a degree, at least two of the board members there, and I think they've been receptive to the idea of us having a chair or a seat on either organization, and then also committing to a more regular meeting of those entities and coming with an agenda, not sort of just like a lunch to, hey, what's going on, but here's what we're doing this year, right? Like, this is the year and this is how it's planned out. What are you guys doing, right? And then we can compare those and say, oh, you're doing this thing, it's just like ours. How can we combine? Do you want it yourself? Should we take this? And I think that that's something that we've been trying to be more aware of and hopefully have open ears about, right? Because I think the listening is the biggest. I think we're here to argue and say that we understand that is the only way that we can continue to receive support and be seen as a positive organization in the community. So that's something that we're committed to, certainly. And then, I know Amy also I talked to. I also talked to Cheryl. There's that element of the fairness, right? Of Chamber needs some money and we need some money. I told Amy, I kind of, my wife and I actually came up with a good analogy, right? So a lot of us have children. You have 2 kids, right? And this isn't an exact example, but one of your kids is perfectly fine and healthy, and the other has some kind of ongoing medical need, right? Like, you don't love your children less, you don't need them in your life less, and one of them needs something more of you based on their DNA and how they're created and formed, and the other one's pretty healthy and they've been around for a while, and you're not going to have your healthy kid go get procedures and take medicine that isn't for your other child, right? So I think that's the only way I can really think to explain why that might be a different number. And the Chamber gets, it's going to be hard for us to have this conversation, right? Because it's not just 15, now it's 30. So I just want to kind of put that out there and say that that's something I think is really important to distinguish the organizations differently.
I think the approach is maybe a little misguided. I don't see the institutions or the organizations as the same. They simply overlap.
Yeah.
And so, in the business area, I don't really see the chamber advocating all that much for historic preservation, for example. And yet, the nature of Main Street, whether it's in Ravenna and other places, is a major focus. And in other words, grant opportunities for Riddle 9 probably wouldn't be available through the chamber. So there's an overlap, but Main Street, I believe, has more of a direct connection to their municipalities. For example, the mayor brought up, we pay a membership fee, that $500, and every year we're supposed to craft a resolution endorsing, our local Main Street program, and it actually has some specifics in it. But chamber is a completely different entity. They're membership based. If you want to join the chamber, you have to fill out an application. You have to say, I think it's based upon employees or certain sizes, and they'll figure out what your fee is. Main Street is completely open. How you want to donate and how much is up to you. But I do think the programs are structured in a way that Main Street programs do have a higher expectation with a connection to their municipalities and their council in specific. So to that extent, I think we need to, separate the two when it comes to how the city wants to support those entities. Now, I have no objection if the city wants to also support the chamber to the extent of $15,000. I think it's a great organization, and they're deserving of it. But when we have these discussions, I think we should consider them in isolation.
Yeah, I understand. I wanted to make sure, if we're pulling. My main point was when you have individuals coming in who are or aren't, again, I don't know, part of the Main Street board, speaking on behalf of the Main Street board, that's where I had an issue. And that's, I guess, the line in the sand that I just want to put it out there and highlight. I understand the differences between the chamber and Main Street. I think the general public, there's still some confusion there, and as you grow and you keep on moving, in fundraising, they'll understand. But I think it's the accountability aspect when we're going back and we're investing in Main Street, which I think, I'm not going to say, but we're being proposed to invest in the Main Street. That there's some accountability on the other end. That they are in fact speaking on behalf of Main Street when they come in. I think that's where I'm coming.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. I think that's something we've heard from you all individually and or as a council, and I think that's something that we are continuing to communicate about as an organization in our board meeting.
And I appreciate you coming in. And
But I mean, and I think that's also where we're trying to find that balance of everyone's passionate about this, right? And so, there are members who are no longer currently on Main Street board, but are very active in our community and with Main Street and are passionate about the things that they're doing. And so, as you can appreciate, that's a harder conversation to have with someone sometimes, right? To say hey, we are all in this together. And so, I think that's something we're continuing to work on, and I appreciate you mentioning it.
My only caution would be a commitment for 3 years. I think it should be more year by year because, if we're going to do anything, this to me, you just don't know. We don't know what's going to be from, year to year, and we may not have money available but I do feel that we should, if we're going to give to them, we should up at least something to the chamber.
My suggestion with that, I don't know if that's where you got it, but it was my suggestion to Brian that it's a multi-year, something in the budget, so that you have throughout the year, it's going to be a line amount is, I guess, could be debatable, but there's going to be something that is going, process you can ask. But that's kind of where I was coming from. So it's expected every year. There's going to be something and we've gone through this every year.
And I just,
No, we did this 3 years ago.
Yeah.
yeah.
It was a 3-year commitment. And this would start in next year, so it would be a budgetary. It's not like we're asking for an appropriation for the current budget. We're asking
For 22.
yeah.
Right.
Correct. And, honestly, I think that's a reasonable request, Amy, as well as, we should be here every year for that accountability check, right? You've given us 15. Here's what we've done with it again. It's not always going to be a Paul Brunn $109,000 grant, but it's certainly going to, I think, always continue to show an great return on investment. So, I think that's a reasonable, we would appreciate that, certainly.
Well, and I don't want to give credit where credit's due, too, because Julie has been in here giving updates, I think, to council. So she has been doing that. I guess just moving forward, having that as well. And I understand during that period where we had that conversation about 218 West Main, there was the ED was out, and board flight. You guys were voting on, obviously, your president-elect coming up, so there were some things going on. A lot of balls in the air, I guess.
Sure.
On Main Street. So.
Well, I do, want to say thank you for the money that you guys have provided to our businesses and, for our community. And like I said, nothing good comes easy. It does eventually get there, but it doesn't always come easy. And I guess Main Street has higher expectations. I guess I'm looking at it. It's we're just starting as a structure here, and it's the amount that you're paying for an executive director. Is that something you feel is a full-time position? That has nothing to do with, I guess, this, but as a starting point, and then grow so that your funding isn't so off. You know what I mean? You're not getting behind before you get started. I guess that was my only thing. But.
Yeah, I think a lot of that. I wouldn't tie that to the salary. It's pretty low as it is, and it's about in line with what Main Street Heritage Ohio recommends for the position. We'd certainly like it to be higher, honestly, so that we could continue to attract great people like Julie. But also the pandemic, right?
That's
we're kind of low on our city funding. We didn't do hardly any events, which is also a good, still year and a half or two. So I think we're in that place because of those circumstances, maybe more than the function of the organization.
Well, I believe that to be true because you're just finishing up your third year, is it?
Yeah.
I think you've had 2 evaluations that I have seen, and I think you surprised the people that how well you did, that you had what they would call perfect scores on the scoring the first year on your work, and I think the second year the same thing. So it's not a case that there are things that you're a victim of the times
like everybody.
right now. And that's the reason I think that if we can help get through that part. Now, originally, when you made your plan, there was not a need to ask for that much money because your plan, if you were able to do those things, would have kept you at that level. I know that's not the case right now because it was hard to do anything. You could earn money with this. So I'm supporting this from the standpoint that I do not want to see it fold, and I do not want to see it mediocre. But I feel the same way about the chamber. Okay. With that, so I'm still of the mind that what we do for one, we do for the other, regardless of how they're funded, because I believe the compensation on the chamber position exceeded what the Main Street exceeded what the chamber was. But again, it's apples and oranges. And with Ryan, she appreciates the flexibility that she gets by not being full-time with that. So you're not going to make as much money.
Another thing to consider as the organization grows is that there was a lot of upfront seeded money. I mean, it was a brand new organization. There was a lot of energy. People donated. People committed to multi-year donations. We didn't have or the organization did not have an executive director for a couple of years. So now what Main Street needs to do over time, the new plan isn't just to go out and get people to commit money every year. It's to become sustainable. And the sustainability can occur in a number of ways. The most fundamental way is for it to put on events to get revenue from its own activities. But I think, we started from the city with a fairly modest commitment, and I think that could help, as the mayor says, get through this period of time where you're making that transition from seeded money that people just gave out of the goodness of their heart for a well-intended, adventure, and now we're migrating into that more sustainable model. So, I guess the question on the table is, what do we want to do for this ask here? You're a little bit concerned about having a multi-year. I'm not that concerned. I would prefer to have a more stable commitment. Tim is the other member of our committee. What are your thoughts?
I'm not against increasing the amount. If we go with 15,000, I would recommend only 1 year. Okay. And if the Main Street Ravenna is looking for a more long-term commitment, 10,000 over 3 years, I would be willing to look at something like that. But 1 year, I think, if we go 15, I would want to go 1 year.
Okay.
That's my thought.
How does that strike you?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a planning perspective, we're talking about 15 guaranteed versus 30 by Mr. Calpi's proposal. So, I mean, I agree with Rob's perspective. I mean, for us, from a planning perspective, right, to say, here's what we know we need to do over 3 years. If we don't know what that city contribution is year by year, it just makes it a little harder for us to plan for the long term. So I think we probably take, the longer term at that rate.
Are you saying that you prefer us to move this forward as 10,000 a year for 3 years rather than a 1 year commitment of 15? Because that doesn't mean 1 year that it ends. It just means or somebody, Amy perhaps, is going to be at the podium asking for another $15,000.
Yeah.
And maybe a longer commitment at that point.
Sure.
Which has some value in the sense that we haven't spent a lot of time with this council talking about Main Street. It would give you the opportunity for the next year to come back with a stronger case for a multi-year at more money. So my advice to you is to reconsider what you think is more valuable.
Well, maybe not an answer tonight, too. We have committee.
Well, I know. This is to get it started. We want to get it out of committee onto the committee of the whole for the next meeting. But the question is, do we craft a tracking sheet for $15,000 for 1 year, or $30,000, or $10,000 each for over 3 years?
No, Rob, I appreciate your point. I think
ultimately it's up to us, not you. I'm just asking you what you think might be a better offer.
It certainly makes a lot of sense. And then we prove it, put up or shut up, right? So our plan is to put up because we think it's a really important harder component of the overall organizations and part of the community. So, 15 1 year.
So we good with that? Moving out.
I think Cliff had something.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cliff.
Cliff Total, 464 Woodland Street. I'm a member of the Design Review Commission, and I represent the Ravenna Chamber of Commerce on that committee.
Could you come up and talk directly to the microphone?
I have a little bit overlapping departments, as you might want to call it. talked about taking down that building, Main Street Ravenna was right there telling you, "Oh, we don't want that. We don't want that. You need to look after that." Well, that's why we have, by ordinance, a group called the Design Review Commission to look at things like that. So we're paying another group to tell us what to do in our town when you already have another group that hasn't got to deal with it yet. Okay, and you don't give much money to the design review, and they're were made by an ordinance. And then on top of that, what are the limitations of Main Street Ravenna? The limitations meaning we're in a mess with our own design review that we're talking about maybe spending thousands of dollars for someone to come in and tell us how it should be run. And now we're going to put someone else in there who is trying to tell us how we're going to run it, how we should run it. I don't understand the mix.
I don't think in our political environment that a donation to an organization like Main Street Ravenna or the Chamber prohibits them from voicing a concern. Now, the Design Review Commission wasn't even given the opportunity for input for the issue we're talking about tonight. That was just something that went through the committee process for 1 month and then voted on by council.
That's what I mean.
So, hey, you don't argue. I would have preferred more input on that from the Design Review Commission, but that's the way it turned out. I don't have a special recollection of Main Street Ravenna coming to that meeting with I think there were people from Main Street Ravenna, but I don't even think the president stayed long enough to talk at that meeting.
Todd Peets came in here and said, "We are against it."
Okay.
Bottom line.
Well, I think I asked him though. Is that a formal thing? And we could look at the minutes, but I thought he said that they were there as members representing themselves, not because I don't think you guys can correct me, but I don't remember a formal action by the board.
Is he came in saying he's with Main Street Ravenna.
I know.
And then you asked him the question, well, is this something that Main Street Ravenna is recommending? No.
Right.
Then what are you trying to accomplish here?
Well, I think
I'd just like to know where this ends and then this starts.
Well, even if they came to the meeting, in my opinion anyway, with the resolution from the board of Main Street Ravenna saying they opposed it, I don't know that. I mean, again, just because we may give money to a charitable organization, I don't think that binds them from speaking their mind or giving an opinion. But I get your point. I mean, at some level, are we creating a conflict?
You got three conflicts there. You got Chamber of Commerce, you got Design Review, which is an ordinance installed group, and now this that we're putting money to. Wasn't long ago we didn't have any money. Now we want to spend more money.
But we give money to both organizations, and like it's been said many times, equally. And even the mayor says that we want to continue to do that. And I agree with that too, by the way. But I guess I just have a little concern that we pay them money and therefore they can't speak up if they. And by the way, I mean at the point it was a debatable issue. Which side you fell on depended upon a lot of factors. So I think it's of value to at least me on council when an organization that's devoted to historic preservation gives their input, just like I would appreciated the Design Review Commission giving its input as well. So I just see it a little differently than you, but I get your point.
What I'd like to see is because it hasn't happened, and I don't see it happen in the past and maybe in the future. This group needs to get together with the Chamber of Commerce and actually decide who's going to do what, and are we going to work together in that? There's no proof that that's happened much at all. Okay,
that's a fair point. I think that when
I sense that they don't like each other.
Oh well, that's not necessarily.
Well, that's just my opinion.
And
I talk about opinions here, and am I right to say something? I don't think they like each other.
Well, we have had some conversations prior to this meeting. I talked with Mr. Hare last week. And I told him that what I'm looking for are complementary groups, not warring factions. One must complement the other.
I haven't seen anything like that, right?
Well,
I will say that I believe that there was a fairly good relationship between the two directors.
well, I'll continue.
Chamber board.
Yeah.
And there's been talk that I think going forward, this is how I feel. I think going forward, once there's a new director name, that we start off on a clean slate, because like when Julie was here, you were in some meetings. It was very contentious, and I don't think that that's how both the groups should work. It's not a competition. It should be, how we were saying, okay, this is Chambers Lane, this is Main Street's lane. I think it'd really be helpful if both groups sit down and it's actually written down, like what groups do what, and then move forward from there.
Yeah, and Amy was going to talk for a minute. I had spoken earlier that.
He was here.
Okay.
Thanks. Do you need my name and address? Sure. Okay. Amy Adams, 7340 Infirmary Road, Ravenna. Main Street Board, some of our board, and a couple of members of the chamber had a meeting in mid-October. And we had a long, heartfelt conversation about this exact issue. And it was our discussion that there were a lot of things that happened, and there were some misunderstandings and some hard feelings. And, the chamber has handled some things longer than Main Street has, because, as Brian said, Main Street's an infant situation, and the chamber's been around longer, and they have stepped up and admirably done things for the community. So we don't want to take away from that. So in the discussion, we talked about our missions and how they do somewhat overlap in the business enhancement area. But our feeling is that we need to let bygones be bygones, and we need to move forward. So we have both committed to working together, and we asked that they appoint someone to our board, and they may ask us to at least sit in on some committee meetings or what have you. Our business enhancement committee has committed to supporting any of the chamber things that are going on and seeing how they can work with them. So I think we're in a positive movement towards what you're actually asking for. We are also planning a meeting in January where we can sit down and have a conversation about, these are our plans, these are your plans, how can we help you, how can you help us, how can we work together. So I think while you may not have seen that in the past, I think you're going to see it in the future. And it is part of our strategic plan this year. It's actually a goal. So I hope that makes you feel a little better about the relationship being a little more friendly.
And I would even recommend maybe having someone from the city at your meetings. So if you're going to need the city to be a part of your events, or in the beginning in January when you have this meeting.
I think that's taken care of.
Is it?
Yes, with
Okay.
Chelsea.
Oh,
As part of
well, I know, but yeah, then she'll.
Kay's on the other one.
Yeah,
They've
okay,
got
well,
somebody there.
anyways, just as long as the communication, goes.
One of the things that we want to do is start having a monthly meeting with city, so that not just the executive director, but also board members maybe come in and have some conversation. And I know Julie was meeting with Frank Fridays.
Every other Friday.
Right. So we thought maybe we need to pull some more folks in and have a little bit broader conversation on a regular basis. So I hope that makes you.
So,
I just want to
sorry,
make
go
a
ahead,
quick comment. I won't mention any names because they're not here to back themselves up. But I was given comments quite some time ago about the divisions between the different groups, and I'm glad there's going to be some effort I hope that it's extremely soon. That way the divisions won't be there anymore and they can actually each one do what they're supposed to do and not a type of, really don't want to use the word bickering, but it doesn't gel and mesh the way that it should. Those are my comments.
Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
All right, so Tim and Amy, we good moving this forward at 15,000 just for 1 year? Okay, thank you, Brian. Thank you,
all for
Amy.
your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have to go feed them, so I gotta go.
We'll feed them. All right, next on the agenda is, let me take a look at the agenda. Amend section 106203. So this is something left over from the changes to the recycling code. Not sure why this isn't in utilities, but what we discovered, I think, when Kay and I were reviewing some of these changes last month, that unfortunately one section in our recycling code, the 106203, which is declaring that the collection and disposal of recyclable materials is a public utility, pointed to the wrong section in our code that establishes the rates. For some reason, it was actually looking at the solid waste code, which is 1060.15 instead of 1062.11. So this is just a little cleanup to make sure that we're pointing to the right rates in this subsection of 1062. Does everybody understand?
I think we put that on there because you weren't here at the last meeting, and there was that why we? I'm trying to remember why it was talked about.
I mean, planning committee is happy to sponsor it. That's fine.
Cliff has a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, Cliff. Go ahead.
Question after reading the newspaper tonight, that is it Freedom that is thinking about suing
No, it's
Franklin.
Franklin Township because of the cost and that.
Well, they have a contract.
Again, now, I've been to these meetings and so did we. So where do we fall in? Are we completely separate of what's happening there?
Oh, yeah.
Did we have something that was close to that situation here or not?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that. We, along with all the other communities, townships, and cities, have signed up for the solid waste district's 18-month plan. So they're the one left out, the one outlier. I think the difference is they have a pretty ironclad contract. And I think that's what was put in the
That
report.
was just it because I didn't know.
But we're all settled. The city is all.
I understand ours here, haven't we? But I just wanted to see how that related to what something we did or could do or might have done, or if it affected us at all. It's apples and oranges, and basically you're saying is.
If it was similar to what Kent's contract was, then it was a lot, a lot more set in stone than what we saw. I haven't seen Franklin's Township's contract, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's different than what we had in place. But we'll see how that transpires. Anyway, back to this. Any questions about what we're asking to do with 106203? Can we move that along for changes?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Okay. Next item, Design Review Commission Consultant. So if you remember, at our last planning committee meeting, I mentioned to you that I did contact the city of Kent, and their plan, and I don't know where far along they are right now, was to hire a consultant, and they allocated $30,000 for that purpose. I know Cheryl's not here tonight, but she had suggested that what needed to precede that was a community plan. And I always get confused with these terminologies, community plan, comprehensive plan. I don't know if they're the same thing or what the subtle differences are.
She's got her strategic plan.
Oh, now we get a third term.
I was thinking she said comprehensive.
Yeah, comprehensive, I
And
think
then
is.
after the comprehensive plan, looking at our zoning code,
Right.
chapter 12, and then the third would be the design review historic.
Right. And so the person at Kent, Bridget Sussel, who gave me the information about what Kent's plans were, the committee asked me to follow up with her, and I did. I had a fairly lengthy conversation with her, and I specifically wanted to hone in on that one question, and as to whether or not hiring a consultant for reviewing our design review commission code needed to follow whatever kind of plan you want to call it. Let's just call it the comprehensive plan. And she did not believe that that was necessary at all. Now, one difference I wasn't aware of, and I don't know how many people here know this, Kent does not have an historic district. So one of the reasons, one of the
I'm sorry, I said that.
what?
And nobody knew where it was.
Well, they don't have one. That's why.
Yeah.
I was thinking it.
So anyway, one of the consultants they're hiring, one of their jobs is going to be to establish a historic district. So we're ahead of them. Now, she said to me, if we didn't hesitate going through the comprehensive plan process, which they did a few years ago, but it would have had some influence. Where we wanted to put that historic district might be important for a consultant to consider. So, number one, it's not necessary that one follows the other. We can do these independently, and there's nothing stopping us from going ahead and hiring a consultant now to do the work for the Design Review Commission review. And number two, it might cost us less. I mean, if they're allocating money and part of that money is to establish an historic district, and you already have one, we might be able to engage the consultants that are going to bid on the Kent consulting job to actually do the work for Ravenna for less money. I don't know. I'm just speculating. So we're back at the idea, do we want to engage a consultant? Do we want to put out a request for quotes?
An RFQ, request for qualifications, in essence, is free. So one thing the design review could do next month is start working on what they would like to see in the RFQ.
Right.
What is the background of the company to perform the evaluation of what we currently have? And once we have that, we solicit. If we want to further, they're going to kind of ballpark us, I'm sure. They're going to say what you're asking for is 10,000, is 50, and at that point, we will have to come back to council for the money. It's not proper for us to solicit RFQs if we're not interested in moving forward.
I'm a little confused because
Okay.
it sounded to me like you were saying we would allocate the money at the end of the process, but now it seems to imply that we want to do it first.
As I told another committee I'm on, it smart me to ask for RFQs if we don't intend to move forward. But the RFQ, request for qualifications, doesn't discuss money. It just discusses if we want to simply bid out a report or if we want to solicit bids to review, then they will give us qualifications and price. But generally speaking, request for qualifications does not involve a price. At this point, you're soliciting companies that do this work, and the design review or the committee will review these and decide who we think is best. And then from that point, you negotiate a price. So
Right.
for the most part, we could move forward with request for qualifications, but first we have to establish what we want out of the request, and then request negotiate the price, we can kind of control the price. But if it's not the intent of council moving forward, then we shouldn't go that direction.
Oh, I agree. And that's what we're talking about, whether there's a will of council to do this.
We're talking about a 17-page document, I believe. Isn't that what it is, Cliff? So there's three different things. There's a sign ordinance, there's the actual ordinance establishing the design review,
And the guidelines.
the guidelines. I'm sorry, the guidelines is only about a 17-page document, if I'm not mistaken. Something like that. So we're not talking rewriting chapter 12 or rewriting chapter 14.
Not necessarily, no.
We're talking a small little document, and some companies might have done this, say that, that sort of thing. So I doubt it's going to cost $30,000.
Yeah, I kind of doubt it too. Now, Ken did allocate the money up front, so it is, they did appropriate the money.
But they are starting from scratch.
Right.
Where we already have a wheel created.
Right, I agree. So, and they're willing to share their request for qualifications. So that could give us somewhat of a head start as well. I know we want to have the Design Review Commission take a part in that, but it always helps to have a little bit of, somebody already doing some of the legwork. A lot of it may not apply since they're looking for an historic district.
And if you review any of Kent's documents, I bet you they're 3 times longer than anything we would do. I believe they get so stuck in the weeds. I've reviewed so many ordinances of theirs over the years. And I can do it in half, a third of the size, and we get the same thing done. They're actually reviewing our new rental ordinance because
They had some issues with the court case.
they're going to have issues. Yes. And they know that.
Right.
Anyway,
So
it's nice to have that resource, but I don't take it verbatim.
no, I agree. I agree 100%. But it's nice of them to share that information. Well, what do people feel? And I think this is open for discussion by the entire council, though ultimately tonight we'll want the committee to decide what to do next. But I don't want this to turn into one of these things where the committee moves something, but the will of the council is not as clear.
Well, let me reiterate. When design review met last, they were all in favor of a consulting firm looking at what we have and making recommendations. And if this committee does not want to move this forward, then design review will come back to the table, but not this. When we meet next month, they will start reviewing their own documents of what we have of those 3 and make recommendations. But as with all committees, it's hard to get everybody to show up and have an opinion. Show up prepared. That's another item. Show up prepared, haven't done their homework, to spend 1 hour once a month to review these in a productive manner.
Okay.
That's another issue.
Right.
So those are their 2 options.
Right. So let's talk about the option for hiring a consultant.
If the option right now on the table is the RFQ, that's the first step.
To know
If we're serious.
what
Yeah.
we need to know what we want out of the RFQ, even before we ask for qualification.
Right. Well, that's going to be part of the RFQ, right? Is to let them know what we want to hire them to do.
Correct. So design review next month could work on the final outcome, and then we could try to bundle it together and solicit companies to do the to request. I don't even know where to start with this type of a company.
Well, again, that's why having the Kent RFQ could be very helpful.
Right.
But before we get to our guests here tonight, I want to get a sense from council where people are thinking about this. This isn't new. We talked about it last month, and even the month before, where the idea of a consultant was broached.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's nice to have a third party kind of come in and take a look at things. There may be things in there that that we've missed over the years. This is what they do for a living, so they might make some great recommendations that could make things work a little more smoothly.
Thank you.
What type of cost are we willing to go to?
Well, that's why you do the RFQ.
No, I just, but as council though, as a whole, it's like, do you see how much is this worth?
Here, 30,000. It could very well be closer to 20,000 that they end up hiring their consultant for. And if we consider that the likelihood is ours would be even less because we don't have the mapping out of a historic district, I don't have an estimate other than maybe under 20,000, around 20,000. That's about where it would be. That help?
I was hoping maybe more like under 15 because I'd like
It
to
could be.
have money. I hate to.
And that's where we would negotiate. When we sit
Yeah.
down and talk dollars. We have this much. I figure most consulting firms, depending on the size of the firm, and I say firm could be a person that is doing this on the side,
Consulting,
a
right.
professor at a university going to do this on the side at $50 an hour, allocates it and think they could do it in 200 hours. Or a firm with, brick and mortar firm that has to turn the lights on, they might be at $100 an hour. And, that's we don't know that until we get to that point. But I would think that council should at least have in the back of their mind $10,000 to $15,000 or something, hold that price a little bit, cap it.
Yeah, I think a professional opinion at this point is, needed to look at everything and to see, we are up to date on things, or, what could we be doing better, or maybe we are doing this right, so.
Yeah, this isn't going to be a yearly thing, to your point, that it's going to be, set us up for the future, So hopefully this is, so to speak, a one and done, but for a while.
Other thoughts? Anybody?
Yeah, I'm okay with checking into it. Absolutely. Cost sounds a little better.
Well, I believe it's worth looking into that of someone that has a background in that area. That way we're going in the right direction right out of the gate.
Mr. Calfee?
No other opinions than what have been expressed already.
All right. So then you and Amy are good to move this along, and the step will be to get engaged the Design Review Commission. Larry?
I think the RFQ should come from council, not from the Design Review Commission.
Well, it would have to be approved
And you're
by
looking
council.
for an expert that will understand the relationship between the historic district and economic development. Again, that's why we brought this up.
Yeah,
And
I mean, that's true. I mean, in my discussion with Bridget, a lot of this has to do with that delicate balance between economic development and historic preservation. And it's not an easy one to sort out. And one of the reasons having a consultant gives us an advantage, in my opinion. An objective observer.
We want the right consultant. And I remind you, this is not like paving North Freedom Street, which is public property. All this time, you're talking about private property. So I urge you to keep that in mind and get the right consultant.
The way the process would go, City Council has to authorize the mayor to solicit RFQs. Okay, and then the Board of Control would review those based on what we're looking for, and then make a recommendation to council authorizing the mayor to enter a contract with that consulting firm. So the mayor has to, it initiates with council, and then has to come back to council to enter a contract. So council has overview, but the design review is on, those members are on the committee. I won't say as experts, but they've chosen to serve on the committee with the interest of preservation. they should get the first review of putting documents together. We don't have anybody else to do it.
Yeah, who else will we get to do that work?
Well, the city of Ravenna already has an economic development consultant.
Yeah, but that's, again, you're talking about one part of the equation, economic development, historic preservation.
Right.
So I don't think that, I would not see that, first of all, he's a consultant, and the work we map out to him is not consistent with what we're talking about here. Plus, I think his point of view would skew it too much in the other direction.
Well, I thought you might want to at least solicit his
Well,
input
I think
as well.
if Mr. West wants to review and participate with the design review commission, I think that'd be a great idea. Sure. I don't think anybody has an objection to that. So if that's your suggestion, we could reach out to him and see if he's willing to do that. All right. So we're going to move this forward to ask the design review commission. In the meantime, I'll try to get Kent's RFQ to give them a head start on their work. So we're really not needing to move any. Do we need to move this?
So I was going to poke you on.
To,
No,
If it's-
we have a direction now. We don't need to move it forward.
Okay, so no action is needed for the committee of the whole. Last item on the agenda: temporary stores, canvassers, and solicitors and peddlers. So in the packet, I gave you what we talked about last time, which was sort of my overview of what these three sections talk about. The one deficiency I see is that we've never carved out any kind of exceptions. And what I did was simply in the peddlers chapter and the canvassers and solicitors chapter added an exclusion for Ravenna schools, organized Ravenna Athletic Association, and other Ravenna charitable organizations as determined by the mayor. And that's pretty much taken straight from the Talmadge Code. I thought that was the simplest way. That's fine. And then the only other thing I crafted in this was to get rid of the temporary stores because I thought there was a certain amount of redundancy. So the peddlers chapter was changed to include temporary stores, or what we define as temporary stores, as a peddler. So we really don't need temporary stores, or because temporary stores is really defined as a transient trader. Tim?
It's all the same.
Well, it's like the pop-up stores,
Right.
or it could be the guy who sets up shop, selling barbecue on a certain place.
With the cell phone places,
Rugs.
I wouldn't call those peddlers necessarily. Those would be the pop-up store or the rug guy,
Right. The rug guy would be a peddler.
the fidget spinner,
Yes.
and I would call those be peddlers or would they be pop-up stores?
So the pop-up stores would, according to this change, would be added to the peddlers section.
So make it more clean and make it one.
Yeah, so you're streamlining
Yeah.
the ordinance.
Yeah.
So getting rid of 858 and moving parts of it to other ordinances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, this all began because, Bob, you had some concerns, and I just want to make sure we've addressed them. And if we haven't, we need to do that.
Kate would remind me how we got on this topic. Somebody called City Hall and wanted to know if they could, was it barbecue or something, or set something up?
The hot dog guy.
No, it wasn't the hot dog. It was somebody else, I thought. Maybe it was, I don't know.
Those are only two I've seen as a barbecue and hot dog.
With a carpet, we had a carpet place that a guy was set up in vacant lots.
Yeah, we kept chasing him away. So that's one of the things with the ordinance. We want to be able to permit these people,
Right.
so we know they have authority from the building owner to be there. But one of the other issues with food is, and I believe this comes from the health department, they need a place to wash their should have a place to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, well, that should be the health department's
Right.
jurisdiction to make sure that stuff happens.
I guess I would always, maybe it's my fault, when I would see some of these pop-up food places on private property, I guess I always assumed the health department would check them out.
Well, the health department seems to pass out temporary permits pretty easily. And
The temporary mobile food permits.
correct, yeah, right.
So with the temporary mobile permit, would that entail having, where they wouldn't have to have a bathroom?
I've never seen a permit. I've never seen what they've issued.
Well,
So-
those are the kind of permits that are given out to like Balloon Fair.
Right.
Is temporary food permits. So obviously they don't have restrooms and everything on Main Street.
Right.
Balloon.
You know, we've been having throughout the city. I mean, are they, who's responsible? Would that be the health department's called?
Any kind of food being served, health department.
So do you know if they're following up? I mean, is there any communication with building department and health department? Do they let you know, like, hey, you know, this person is not, does not have our, you know, blessings, or, you know, does not have a permit?
They don't let anybody in the city know any of that.
No, we don't know. We don't.
I mean, I must think
Well, I
they
know we
should.
both at the events too. Yeah, I agree. At the events too, I know I've seen multiple people there with the clipboards. Maybe it's because we're there early. I don't know, but you know, I've seen them. You know,
Walking around.
Yeah.
They do check at the one fair. They check the food stands.
Yeah.
When I've done some Kent ones, when for some charity events, you always see the Kent person. I mean, they're back and forth going in and checking.
They have their own health department.
Right, I know that.
And I'm looking.
And that makes
through-
it easier for them
Yeah.
because it's under the same jurisdiction.
Dude,
So the issue about the property owner, I mean, that's an interesting question, but from my perspective, that's really isn't that up to the property owner to make sure they have permission? It's not.
Well,
Should it be up to the city to?
the cell phone school, lighthouse facility, obviously has an owner, but then it has a property manager that's resides in Akron. The people renting Lighthouse Pool or the dollar store, they don't. It's not really their territory to know who's out front. You know, that sort of thing. So I think if somebody's going to set up, the property owner should know.
Right.
Permission.
I don't disagree with that. I just wonder what the city can necessarily do about it.
So from the way, I believe the way our ordinance is written, unless they're selling agricultural, they're supposed to come in and get a permit from the city or from the
Yeah, of their own raising.
from service director. So the application could state who the owner is, a contact number.
That could be an administrative process. It doesn't necessarily need changes to the code. And I don't know. I forget what form the Mayor City uses, but it.
Well,
Quite often it's the parade.
Yeah, right.
Well, Rob, what we have presently that we're using is the solicitor's application. They have to fill out their name, present address, what they're selling, the company's name, all that. And then there's like they have to do, then they have to go over to the PD and get background check,
Right.
fingerprint, and all that.
Right.
And then they can sign up for the day,
Or-
week, month, or year.
Right.
But I will tell you, I don't know, last time we got one, they just go out and they do it, and they just
Well,
take their chances of getting stopped.
yeah. The enforcement part is tricky. We always have these debates about what that means. And there's a lot of stuff. And one other minor change I made was for peddlers, it requires a metal badge. And I just suggested we just change that to just a badge. I don't know why it has to be metal.
that was gonna be my question. Just rather than a badge at all, could they use the permit? Rather than just trying to streamline and make less work. So I don't know what a badge. How do you define that? Could it just be the permit? Because
And that's what
Well,
we
they
told
have,
them.
the current code says they have to have both on their body when they're out.
What we've told them, well, they should have a badge from the company that they're with to identify themselves. And then what we tell them is, like, we give them the other part of the permit, and we say, that
Yeah.
you need to go through
I guess my point is, I doubt the letter of the code is being met for each one of these applicants, and I don't know that we want to just change that. It's fine to leave it as it is. We could simplify it, but then maybe there'll be some reason for some person to have them go through this rigid application process. So I wanted to make it simple, but if you guys want to review that stuff too, we could. But I think a lot of this could be administrative, and maybe even ask the applicants for food if they've got a permit from the health department. Maybe that's a requirement before they can apply.
It should be part of the application permit.
Yes, that's what I was just going to say. That looking at this, the health department, it's right on their website. No, they have to have it 10 days prior to when they want their establishment, I guess. And it also says no more than 10 temporary licenses will be issued per the license period to the same operator. I'm curious what that.
Well, I think
license
if it's
period
that
is,
frequent, they need to do something more permanent.
But if they're applying with the city, your point, they should have that ready to go too. I think.
But I think it'd be hard if our permit, as it is now, includes food, because then they have to go to the health department anyways. I think that'd be difficult for us to, we can't follow up on it. I mean, that's not our job. That goes to
No, I guess what we're saying though is if somebody is selling some sort of food or preparing some sort of food, before you give them a permit as a peddler, you could see their permit from the health department as part of the process,
Or at least the license application.
Yeah.
So that one goes to the health department and one goes to you. So you know exactly what they're applying for. You have that 4-page document from the health department. All you're issuing is the permit, and then the health department is then doing the inspections as written on their website, which I hope they're doing, if they're getting the license. So that covers the city.
But like I said, I think those could be administrative. Cliff, did you have a comment?
Just a question here. What's the largest attended event in the city of Ravenna?
The car show. The car show.
The car show.
Oh, the car show, yeah.
Okay, are you going to put something in there that is a firewall to keep people from coming in? Because I was there last time when the hot dog guy tried to set up in a front yard across the street from the root beer stand. And the guy that was helping with the show, Joe Mazzola, went over and talked to him and said, "You have a permit. Why? I have a permit for the city. So are we going to have something there as a firewall to keep that from happening?" Because the main thing to take in consideration there is the reason why we put that car show on and not let anybody else in there sell food is because the people that do sell food there could lose business, but for them it's been real good. And we've kept out other people from coming in there and selling products. So is there going to be something in there that stops that? Is that written in there, or have you been able to do that before? I'm just looking at the mess, because I've seen it happen.
Not to issue any permits for
On
that
that
area.
But his is
guy
for
has a health permit. I'm not picking on him. He runs a good business, but he said he had a health permit. I have all the
Well,
necessary permits.
it did cause a problem at one point, and on that, I don't recall it last year.
Because the city didn't get involved. It was Joe Mazzola
when that happened,
finally
when
told that guy.
when that happened, when the hot dog guy, Gary was still.
This
because
Gary
he-
was dead already by the time.
No, he
he said-
wasn't. Not when that happened across the road.
Well,
I'm telling you,
because
last
Gary-
August, Gary was dead, and Joe Mazzola went over to talk to the guy who was setting up in the front of a yard almost by the root beer stand.
Because Gary came up here and reamed me because that guy was selling hot dogs and we knew nothing about it because we don't issue food.
That was
like
two separate things.
Right, two separate things. This happened last August, and I just want to make sure that it happened again. Because
Well,
Gary
it
wasn't
seems
around.
to me the hot dog guy would need a permit as a peddler.
Well,
And if he didn't have one, we could send the police out
I'm
there.
just looking at it so you don't run into a problem.
Yeah, no, I'm saying I think what we have already in place, even without any of these revisions,
You want to take
Should've
care of
prevented
those people that have businesses out there.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that he would have been a peddler. He's transitory. He's not doesn't have a permit. So unless the mayor gave him an application, we could have been removed by the police department.
So
Even
maybe
now, without any of these changes, that could have happened. I don't know why it didn't.
But he moves around anyway, so if somebody gets permit to go at this point, he can move anywhere.
So maybe you should have an exemption, like you said, when you're on these
Absolutely.
permits on the bottom, except, this is good, except on the car show. You are not permitted to be a peddler, whatever you call it, on the day of the car show. This is not, this
Well,
is
again, that
null
would
and
be
void on that day.
administrative process.
Yeah, that's what day and where, what location. You have the owner's permission. I would expect Giant Eagle and Wendy's and Burger, they're not going to give permission
Right.
to this. But even
Or the city.
even if Sports Express did, who has no interest in selling food, they don't care. They have to come to the service director for permission,
Right.
and she could say no
Yes, exactly.
because this specific day is set aside.
Right. Yeah, I think you have the authority to do that. No, it's a good point, but I think we got it covered.
Because I saw it happen twice.
Yes. Well, as I said before, a lot of the problems are enforcement, not the code. It's just making sure we know the proper procedure for ending that problem. We're always going to raise that issue, but I think after tonight we'll have a better way to deal with it. Okay, are we good to send these changes forward? Is there any desire to make any further changes to these codes? We're going to eliminate temporary stores. We're going to make those transient traders part of the peddlers. We're going to include exclusions for the Girl Scouts and the Boy Cub Scouts and all those other. Chair, is that okay?
Good job, Rob.
I did read tonight in the ordinance, the 840.01, where peddler is defined, that a peddler includes a hawker and a huckster.
Yeah, that's existing
Yeah.
language.
I guess we keep it in, but I had to look up what a huckster was. They sell their goods by shouting.
Yeah.
And so that's permissible in Ravenna. Just wanted to make sure we knew that. It's all good with me. It's fine to move forward.
All right, then. Boy, thank you guys. I appreciate all the input tonight. Mayor, do you have a management update?
I wouldn't think of it.
Okay, thank you for that. In that case, it is 6:47, and I will adjourn the planning committee.
Okay, it is 6:47, and I'm going to go ahead and call Public Health and Safety Committee to order. I only have one item on my agenda. It's pretty simple, so it shouldn't have a lot of discussion. I have a message here from Judy that I will read the difference. Okay, so she says, okay, they are opting it up to their insureds being age of 18. Currently, they offer it at the age of 60 and older is with Optum. Anyone that has United Healthcare as a primary insurance provider can get free gym membership. So previously, it was only for age 60 and older, and that was a lot of it with the silver sneakers. But now they're starting at age 18, which is pretty cool because I think, if somebody is on United Healthcare, some of our younger youth can actually, that are 18 and over, can participate and have it paid for. She says if they opt in, Optum pays us directly for their visits. It's the same way as Silver Sneakers works. So there's no exchange of money. It goes straight to Parks and Rec, and they receive the money. So this is a great opportunity for anybody who wants to get fit that does have United Healthcare, because now you only have to be 18 and over to have it paid for. So I think it's a positive thing, and that's all we're doing is we're changing the eligibility of the policy. Any updates or changes on that, Brian? that good?
No.
Any questions?
Sounds great.
Hey, let's promote our younger kids getting a free gym membership. If you know of anyone that's taking United Healthcare, that's a great opportunity. So, okay, we'll go ahead and I'll move this forward. Management update. Anything here? No? What about with the fire department? When we discussed with Grant, when were we going to talk about that again? When, I'm trying to remember when that needed to.
17th.
January?
December 17th.
December
So
17th.
4 days, right? Yeah, that's due. I think the last time he was here when I asked if he was going to apply for the vehicle for AFG.
No. I'm talking about the one with the 3 firefighters.
Safer, so that is in February.
So we'll have time,
So-
but I still want, right now, I would really, if you haven't had a chance, Christina went and had some eye-opening experience.
I
which-
spent 3 hours with the fire department last week. You don't realize how tiny the fire department is until you're in there, and that there's a bunch of grown men, trying to operate in there and live. But it was interesting to see, to kind of get a better idea. One of the things that they shared with me, and I need to find out where the data came from, is the recommended number of runs a firefighter should have a year is approximately 100. And each, when you divide it all up, and our guys are doing 172.
Right. It's extremely
So-
busy right now.
So they're really, really busy, but they're keeping really high spirits and trying their best to, still support and serve our community. But yeah, it was an interesting 3-hour visit.
So if you have any apprehension on, with this grant and, where they are with that, I definitely would try to schedule some time over there to see. And I know from what I'm even seeing with, Akron Fire Department, I mean, it's long lines of waiting to get in the ER. So who knows how long this is going to last, if this is just going to be a temporary thing, but I just wanted to throw that out there as some discussion piece to keep that in the back of your mind. But with no management update, it is 6:52, and I will adjourn. Yeah, I moved it right through.
6:52, I'll call the Streets and Sidewalks Committee meeting to order. 3 items for consideration and a couple of discussion items this evening. First 2 items kind of go hand in hand. Authorization for bids for South Chestnut Street and LPA agreement. Mr. Finney, do you want to kind of go over those 2, if you would, please?
The Riddle and Chestnut was a grant that we received, an 80-20 split. And the LPA agreement, the other one is what we have to do with the MS grants that we received. They're under the review of ODOTs. We have to meet their rules and regulations. And this LPA, Local Public Authority grant agreement, basically dictates how we're supposed to manage the project and what documents we need to provide to close out the project.
And they're willing to pay 80% of that project.
Correct.
So, and it's almost a $400,000 project. So,
And again, the LPA agreement tells us what they expect from us, or we won't get the money. We have to abide by the rules, and that's their rules.
LPA standing for?
Local Public Authority.
and it's a pretty good sized section that will be getting resurfaced.
Yeah, originally they were 2 grants, and this past, maybe in the spring, they received COVID money and they wanted to bump up projects. stated we would bump our projects up as long as we could do Riddle and Chestnut at the same time. This is South Chestnut, from Maine to Lake. From our point, the administration, in essence, is half combining the two projects, and it would be having two projects. And they agreed to that.
So I guess for the sake of it, the first item, authorization for bids for the South Chestnut and Riddle. Are there any other questions on that, or can we go ahead and move that item forward? So we'll move that forward, and then the LPA agreement for South Chestnut on that agreement. Hearing none, we will go ahead and move that item forward as well. So, next item is the authorization for bids for the annual paving program. There's a budget in everybody's packet. It shows where the funds are going this year. Covers the South Freedom Project, the Riddle Chestnut Project, striping. The Milton overlay is on the map that you also have of the different streets that are being considered this year. Those are in the orange or yellow on the map, and you can see the blue, which would be the Riddle Prospect Project, and then the red section would be the South Freedom rebricking. Also in the budget this year, big item is the signal at Cleveland and Sycamore, upgrading the signal at that intersection.
Bob, do you know when the turning signal is going to ever get here for, I just can't remember, Maine and Chestnut? We talked about, didn't we talk about having a turning signal there?
We've talked about it, but we've never actually moved anything forward.
Wasn't there one we were waiting on getting a turning signal? Maybe I was thinking about it and was hoping for it.
I've not even thought of moving that forward.
Okay.
So
Well, I know Maine and Chestnut is just really rough. I'm sorry to bring that. I didn't mean, but I just
No,
was
that's
wondering
fine.
about
We
it.
have discussed it, but I think it's been hashed out.
And can you just clarify? This isn't. I apologize about taking this off course again, but Main Street or ADA. Can you talk about how that is funded? Why that's not part of our plan, and is there any plans for that to be paved? Because I know that's a question. I'm probably not the only one gets asked on 59. I know I've asked you before, but you just kind of lay it out.
So the state routes are still paved by ODOT. ODOT would manage the project. The city would pitch in 20%. So State Route 88 was paved a couple years ago. ODOT paved State Route 88. We made improvements to the road before they came in the following year and paved it. We still pitched in our 20 because it is still considered State Route 59. Chestnut Street in the early 70s changed its designation from State Route 44 when they moved State Route 44 to the bypass. And at that time, ODOT made improvements to the corridor and then turned it over to the city. City Council accepted that as a designation change. And that's really the same thing with South Prospect Street. For whatever reason, State Route 88 begins at Main Street. I don't know if it's history has always had it there, or if it actually.
So when projects are, or you're going to resurface or upgrade, that's done. The decision is made by ODOT. Is that
state routes?
Yeah. Okay.
only on the 2 state routes that we have.
So do they have a different guidelines than what we do as far as like so many years, or they rate it, they have a scale that they rate it by?
They have an urban paving program that they program, and then they look at the average daily traffic, and they look at the paving rate index. And I used to joke, you fill up a hot cup of coffee and drive down the street, and it spills on your lap behind the state road. I don't know, they don't do it that way, but they should. And they would. Okay. Last week, I finally got a commitment from them that they are plugged in to do that.
So 2 more years of.
Well, fiscal year 2024 could be August of 2023. They would just do all of State Route 59 Main Street, city limits. We don't know when, until they assign a PID number, project identification number. That's when it gets plugged into a particular quarter of fiscal year 24.
You're saying that it's city limit to city limit on 59.
Correct.
Okay.
More than likely, they'll go to Cotton Corners, but it's a little bit outside of our.
Because on the west main portion of 59, we had the curb improvement on the north side of the street.
Correct.
And it's not on the south side. Would any repaving include that south side curbing?
We're going to do it in 2023.
In 2020?
I want to widen. We've already put the utilities on notice. No avail, but we're going to keep trying. We may be putting curbs up to the power poles, and the power pole might be on the street. That might force them to do something.
And then on the east main portion of it, the repaving would include curbs in some places? No curbs there.
Just do asphalt.
Asphalt in that area.
And ODOT contributes a certain portion. They give us, there's a name for it, but they send us a certain amount of money every year because of our 2 state routes. And the intent is for maintenance, plowing, and that sort of thing. That's what that money is supposed to be used for. So the improvements that we make, curbs, catch basins, and that sort of thing, they do, but we have to pay 100%. So if we want them to do curbs as part of the project, then they'll include it, but we have to pay, again, 100% of those costs.
Thank you.
You know roughly what 20% of that project would be?
Main Street,
Yeah.
about $1 million would be $200,000. It was another interesting thing I learned at AMS last week. So, Feds passed a $550 billion transportation percent increase to our budget based on that. 4% is not much. When you look at the CPI of being 8-9%. So we know asphalt is going to go up more than likely more than 4% a year. However, they're only giving us, we'll be lucky to see 4%. So I don't know where the other 550 billion is going to go. But.
Although it's very encouraging to hear that East Main Street 59 repaving is on the calendar. That's an excellent to hear that. That's one of our most asked things.
We've tried to move it up. We've done a lot of paving
That's great to
within
hear.
the city, but it gets lost on Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bob, you guys done a great job on that. As the guy that is the admin on Ravenna Roadways, our Facebook site, that is the biggest question always. I have to update it almost monthly because people don't read everything. And I put it in there all the time that the state's responsible for it. So obviously you got it moved up because originally it was what, 25?
26, 7.
Yeah.
So good work. nobody will complain about that, that's for sure. You guys have all done.
No. Yeah, we've been after them to try and get it moved up even more, but I think we probably hit the limit at this point.
The only other question is, they actually pay for the parking spaces too?
They did when they paid it in 2008.
Because it's a lot wider there, obviously, than the road.
They did in 2008.
I just wondered, because it's awful wide in there. And you're widening.
It would from Advance Auto and down to Scranton. You know,
So then we'll have legal size 2 lanes.
not a federal stand, not federal standard. Federal standard is 12-foot lanes, but it will be about 42 feet wide total. So we can get,
Left side's width.
I'm sorry, 46 feet. It'll be about 46 feet. So we'll be a couple of feet short of the federal standard. So we'll have over 11-foot wide lanes. And then in the future, if City Council wants to turn that into a 3-lane road, 2 through, 1 turn lane, that'll be up to City Council someday.
Like I said, great job. So I don't have to answer the questions no more. They're constant. And they don't read, and it's a state. When are you going to do this? Isn't it enough to do Freedom or any of those other ones? They want to know about Main Street, and they don't understand it.
Yeah, and Bob should be commended for the work he does with the state and the grant money that he secures for the community is
Saved us a
very
lot.
welcome and saved the city a lot of money. So, thank you. Any other questions on the paving program for this year? If not, we'll go ahead and move that forward.
When did you say the South Prospect thing?
I was going to save that for next month, but we've been earmarked for a grant to pave South Prospect until January, but we're second on the paving list out of about 24 projects. So that's going to get funded. It's 20. I'm going to try to get it actually. So we've been awarded this grant to pave North Chestnut Street. It's about a $600,000 project. The way things have been going with the AMAX, I believe I can pull those two together in 2024. And some of these, without getting into the weeds, there's turnpike money that has come to AMAX. AMAX decided to pay 10% of the 20% if we can deliver these in 2 years. So instead of it being a 90 or an 80-20, we can get a 90-10, which makes things even better. And with our staff, we're able to deliver these projects quickly. So that's going to be my goal, is to do it in 2024. When we did the Air Fund project in 2010, we did all of Prospect and all of North Chestnut. That was about $800,000 project in 2010. So it was a good project. That's basically what we'd be look at repeating with probably
And it's
1.2 million.
For the most part, those sections are still okay.
Correct.
Is that part of the discussion items?
No.
Okay.
But cat's out of the bag now. It won't be official until next month when the policy committee votes on it.
All right, so we'll move that forward. Next 2 items are just up for discussion. The paving list and paving budget.
Yeah, where the money's going for the most part. We returned a couple $100,000 last year. I expect we'll do the same thing. Projects are going to sell cheaper than we anticipate. That's how we budget. You guys know Pat left, so I'm in the process of looking for a replacement. I won't hire somebody just to put them in the seat. I will hire somebody that's qualified and meets the criteria.
Have you had any people apply? Have
We have
you?
2 resumes that I may interview. I'm not ready. I'd like to see, 10, 12.
Good luck.
I had 150 for the secretary position.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I know it's quite a bit different position, but Consulting firms pay young engineers quite a bit of money. Young engineers aren't looking for health benefits. They're not, they're looking for the experience and money more so than free time. So it's kind of difficult right now to compete with the salary and tell a young person, yeah, but we got great benefits here. You got all these days off of work, and so they're really trying to build a resume with these big planned projects.
You have an idea of how long that process may take you? This will depend on the.
Yeah, we have a new group of graduates graduating now, from the universities, I assume. Not really looking for somebody right out of college, but there's a chance that there's a non-traditional student that has work experience that's graduating that has some of this experience.
How long has Patrick stayed with us?
2013.
Quite a long time.
Yeah, and he had a couple years of experience before he came. He didn't have the experience to do what he did, but he was trained in some things that he put on his resume. It was quite a bonus.
Was there anything else at that point, this point about for discussion? Okay. All right, 7:10. I will adjourn the Streets and Sidewalks Committee meeting.
(7:10). I'll start the Utility Committee meeting. And I would like to ask Mr. Finney if he wouldn't mind explaining this annual quality control inspection contract.
Every year we lock into a contract with quality control inspection to perform inspection services as needed. We budget money for inspection services every year. I think it's $25,000. We have a contract with a company locked into a price, locked into their overtime rate, and that sort of thing. It doesn't mean we have to use them. If we have a specific project that another company may be more qualified to do, then we certainly could go a different direction. We've used QCI for many years. So this is kind of a contract that we've done all over the years.
Excuse me. Didn't the fees go up last year?
They went up 3% this year also.
Oh, they did. I think they were a little bit more dramatic last year for my.
They might have been.
Yeah.
But again, we don't necessarily have to use them. There's been some years we didn't use them. We entered a contract, but we didn't use them. Last year we used them to monitor the AT&T project down in Diamond. We billed for their time, plus the reports are pretty good. They have a digital system. How they can calculate it, and there's actually more services that they would provide, but not at this price. They would manage the whole project for us if we asked them, but not at the dollar, the hourly rate here. So this is specific to what we've used them for in the past.
Are there any comments pertaining to this contract, the way it was explained?
I'm good with moving it forward.
Okay, excellent. Okay, that is it for this, for the Utility Committee.
The next up is Personnel Committee, and we just have one item to consider since the mayor's not in here. Should we take a stand-up and stretch break for a minute?
Do you have anything? Or K? Or we could take it after move CED in front. If you want to do that.
That's fine.
Okay.
Actually, the mayor is leading that discussion probably too.
He's coming out now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should have taken you up on the stretch break then.
We're taking a stretch break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciated.
7:15, and we'll call the Personnel Committee meeting to order. We have one discussion item tonight, contract renewal for Dennis West. Mayor?
Well, it's that time of year. His contract begins at the first of the year. I do not have the copy of it yet. Paul is still writing on the stuff on the contract that she would like to see. The contract's basically the same as it was last year. The money's the same. This is my management update on this. Dennis has been interested in trying to get an intern that would be here since he works from home. He is coming in 1 day a week right now, and he's probably going to increase that. But he has some things that an intern can do to get some of the stuff in line that he wants to be working on. And it'll be paid for out of the money that was allocated. It's not an additional expense to the budget. It's part of the allocation with that. Dennis is, I think, done a yeoman's job, and you start to see the results of this physically very soon. He keeps track of what's going on, and you'll see in here there's a couple of other things that are coming up. But he has put together the MOU for the continued demolition of the Chestnut Street building, and that's one of those brick by brick kind of things. He's keeping track of the property that is really owned by the fellow that bought it, that is demolishing it on Lake Street, the big brick building there. They're going after it a lot faster. They've hit some snags in the terms of what's available. A lot of they were interested in a lot of the wood that was in both of these buildings, and all of a sudden that's dried up. And I don't know if it's, once again, because they don't have other supplies or things to work with. When you look at the destruction we've had in this country, especially in the south and now the middle of the country, with hurricanes and now a tornado that I never heard of, a tornado being on the ground over 200 miles. But there's a lot of need then for brick, and hopefully that the market for the wood will come back. But the fellow owns the property, and he's already got the buyer interested in it from somebody that's already there in Spectrum. I think they're interested in buying the property from him. So that one I know will get completed. I keep my fingers crossed on Chestnut Street with that, but the MOU that we have there, Dennis would like me to get that signed, so we have some kind of a hold on the individual that's doing that project. But I'm recommending that we go ahead with Dennis's third year. We will have a harder decision to make next year, probably.
So this is a 1 year?
Yeah.
So I had a question about the internship. Is that going to be folded into his contract?
Is that?
The funding to pay the intern?
I don't think so. He's used the discretionary fund. There were plans when that was laid out that he'd go to national conventions and doing.
Right, but that's in his contract, isn't it?
It's those were things that were enumerated, but he has not used the money for that. He's used it for things that he needed to do to get things going here.
I guess what I'm asking though is, will the intern be an employee of the city, or I mean that's because we have a contract for him as a consultant. I'm just trying to figure out how that works.
It would be for him, I think. It would be an employee for him.
Well,
then that's why it should be part of the
Heather's,
contract.
Heather's bringing it in, but the funds would be allocated out of that money.
I thought they were talking about a non-employee type arrangement,
okay.
Contractor type arrangement. Was what I heard from Heather.
Yeah.
So it would not be an employee.
And it's not a permanent thing.
Cool. That's what I figured it would
Yeah.
have to be. Could it be a stipend as opposed to a salary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So for subcommittee action, we are moving that forward. Are we saying that, or is
I'm
it
going to try and have the contract for you next week.
for next week?
I quite honestly like to pass this at the makeup on the 30th.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get the information, but we've got 2 or 3 things that are last minute things that, and we're just getting the paperwork on them.
I'm okay with moving it forward.
Matt, you good?
Yes.
Okay. And Mayor, the management update then, that was part of right there. And so we're done with the personnel committee right now. We're done with the personnel. Okay, good. We'll adjourn that at 7:21.
I guess I'll take this next one and get started. Cheryl is, of course, not with us tonight.
Get
The
it called
items
to
that
order.
we have in here, the first item,
I call it being called over. Actually, you probably didn't call it over.
Want me to throw you the gavel? Yeah, you can really-
By direction of Council President Mr. Kluge, I am calling the Community and Economic Development Committee meeting together at 7:22. First item, review and approval of the 15-year tax abatement.
this is the enterprise zone agreement for the new business that we believe is going to locate at Ray Hunter's Chestnut Street location. The school board gave their blessing to this on last Monday, and we do have a copy of their resolution to waive the 45 days and for the length of it, the 15 years. This has to be ratified by us here, and then it has to go to the county. Brad Earhart is riding hard on this particular document, and my job is to get it through council tonight. Well, we'll vote on it probably on the 30th, if possible.
So for action tonight, we're all in agreement on this one.
Yeah, move it forward.
Amy, Matt,
It's just me and you that are on it.
Oh, yeah, Cheryl's not here.
Cheryl's not here.
okay? Then we'll move down to the next one.
The next item is the MOU for, as I already mentioned, the demolition of the Chestnut Street Old Oak Rubber. My way through this, and this is similar to the one that he had signed a year ago. This expires on the 31st, and he would like to have this in order to have some kind of a hold on the individual that is doing the work there.
Do we know how much longer this project, I mean, this is a big project. Do we know about how much longer it's going to take?
I do not.
I know I get asked that quite a bit.
It's very slow.
Yeah.
because they're taking it down a brick at a time with that. But so far they've been working hard at getting it done. But I can't. It could take another year to take that down.
There's a lot to it.
Dennis checks on them for visual inspections. There.
And the MOU here is between the city and the contractor that's working on this right now,
Yes.
and to show a agreement and cooperation and our mutual understandings, and we're extending it for 1 year.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Remember, we were actually given authorization to demolish the building through the court system.
Mhm.
So in essence, they're acting on our behalf to demolish the building.
Okay.
And one of the big issues, they have to carry insurance. Name the city is secondary. I didn't get a chance to read this revised or updated version, but that should be included in that document. Sure.
Bob, you and I'll have to get together to be sure that's right.
And you're hoping and requesting that this MOU then would be signed by the end of this month, or at the committee of the whole next week?
Yeah. Well, no, on the 30th when we have the
End of the year meeting.
end of year meeting.
Okay. All right. And
Okay.
Amy,
Yeah, go ahead.
you're fine with that?
Yep, absolutely.
Next one down, contract with the state of Ohio for
Okay. That just came in this afternoon. Chelsea did send it to all of your emails for an opportunity to look at it. This is a housekeeping item. The other one is expiring, and once again, we need to get this in order. I've been waiting for the contract to come. I'm glad it's here tonight, and you have a chance to look at that. I would also, if you decide to move this on, we have to have this done because with the RLF funds that we've got here, we have to be accountable through the way they do business with this. But this is another thing that I would like to get on the agenda for the 30th.
without objection, right, Amy?
Yes.
Okay, without objection.
So we had a long meeting that day.
Next up, preparation for Ryan Parkway at Chestnut Commerce.
Okay. Bob, did you want to expound on that at all?
Is it the new road?
That's the new road.
Looks like it's
Yeah.
Rayanne, I think.
Yeah, it's Rayanne.
Okay, sorry.
That's it.
Was there a
Yeah, named after the two.
Partners.
Yeah, two
God,
partners.
boom, boom.
on the agenda?
No, I put it on. But you sent the message around for the meeting tomorrow.
I did. There's just so much to discuss. We're going to have multiple ordinances. There's two items that have to happen before we can actually build the road. So, as you know, the county auditor actually has ran Parkway on their website as city property. So that's been reported, ready to go. We have been verbally told that we have about $600,000 of a $750,000 road. I'm sorry, grant. We have about a little over $600,000 grant. We're waiting for two specific items before we can get this out. The engineer plans aren't finished yet. It's pretty important. And the other is there's an agreement from the state for one of the three grants. We received the one grant a couple years ago, the TID grant, through the county. The other two are newer grants we've been working on for months. We have the one grant agreement, we're waiting for the other grant agreement. When we get to that point, we're going to need multiple ordinances authorizing mayor to advertise and authorizing mayor to enter contract with Portage County to allow me to administer the grant, the program. We're going to need ordinances allowing us to administer the grants. So I'm not sure if that's why you put it on here or not.
Well, I wanted you to be aware that there might be some things that I come to you at the 11th hour with to get this in order, and I wanted to put it on your radar with that. This is also going to involve Gray paying some money back into the RLF funds, and then we will probably reapportion that for the shortfall. All of this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but this has to be the city take responsibility for this, and we have to have all the money because all these grants pay when you show them it's done and you hand them the bill. So we've got to front the money on this, and with the money that Ray is going to pay back on a previous, which was a loan, will be available in the RLF fund so that we have the complete money to be able to do this. And there probably, I think the payback, we won't need anything, but to reapportion it would probably well, but I'll have to see what that figure is. And that's basically just information for you right now.
So no action really needs to happen on it tonight.
Come January, we're hoping that all of these things are going to start falling into place. And as the mayor said, we may need some special council meetings to get the ball rolling.
We are all committed to it. Absolutely. Okay, and management update, additional things, Mayor, or is that all?
Well, there's a lot of stuff still going on. The gentleman behind us is still, he's out there working on his place. We're not sure yet what is happening with the other GE plant out there, but we know there are some things going on there, but we have not talked directly with the people out there that own the place right now. But Bob's going to be very busy shortly. If the weather breaks, Menard shows up to get that kicked off. And if we land this new business, they're going to have that work. And you can see all the road work that they've got to do. That's, where there's engineering still involved with that. And I think it's going to be a very busy year, this new year that's coming up, which is good.
It's hard to imagine we could have about $180 million being spent next year. This town's never seen that.
Yeah.
And read through.
Not even comparable century.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Okay. With that, that committee is adjourned at 7:32.